managing spatial data in the Caribbean region for about 3 years, bringing up data openly and practicing data platform in the Caribbean. We now have about 50 participants on the Caribbean Open Data Platform. This is continuation of what we were doing. This webinar is. So I'll give you a little bit of context of today's webinar itself. On December 24 and 25, a tropical trough system, it produced in Saint Vincent and Grenadines. Actually, it impacted Dominica and Grenada as well, but not to the extent Saint Vincent and Saint Lucia got it. The one aspect of it was during the Christmas Eve. People were in a festival mood, and suddenly in the background, a terrible storm was brewing in the south of the island as well as on the north of the island. The results of that storm, and which was outside of the hurricane season, was flash flooding, landslide, and loss of, as well as loss of properties and damage to the infrastructure. As a result of that, government of both Saint Lucia and Saint Vincent and Grenadines, together with the World Bank, they launched what we call Rapid Damage and Loss Assessment, or assessment, which was to provide an insight on what damages occurred, where the loss are anticipated, as well as how much of those damage and loss was anticipated. So a technical team from both the governments as well as the World Bank started working on that. So one major challenge on that was getting the right data and being able to analyze those data to understand the nature of the event as well as the impact. We use large amounts of data. Some of these data hosted in each country's national GeoNode. GeoNode is an open source data management and sharing platform, as well as we start collecting data from different line ministries as well as different actors. So this webinar tries to capture that process, and we have the privilege of having 4 distinguished panelists who were close working with us during the process. So they will they will tell us and about how that process and what was the data in that process and what are the challenges for that. Our panelist today is Richard McLeish, who is project coordinator for Regional Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project and Hurricane Thomas Emergency Project, as well as I have Cecil Harris. He is Senior Engineering Consultant, Ministry of Finance, Saint Vincent and Grenadines. I also have Marco Rodriguez, who works out of our office in Bolivia. He is Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist. And I have Melanie Harris, PhD candidate from University of West Indies. And as I said, I'm your host, Bishwa Pandey. Richard McLeish, he was deeply involved in helping us, not only because he was a project coordinator, but also because he was involved in the DaLA process, and he helped us connect us with the data. And he has over 17 years of experience in team leadership, management of the project, human resources, and operations. So on the other hand, he works as a senior consulting engineer with the Ministry of Transport and Works, and I have the privilege of working with him, looking where the damages were. So on the other hand, is our lead guy on conducting the damage and loss assessment. He worked in both nations agencies as well as the World Bank, and his help in conducting the DaLA damage and loss assessment was instrumental. Harris is GIS specialist as well as PhD candidate. He helped us remotely conducting geoanalysis, mapping, hazard identification, and such. Thank you everyone for joining us and agreeing to participate. Now, brief go through how we will start this process. I will ask the questions to each, and each panelist will discuss their role, their what they did and what changes were, and then after that discussion is done, I would open the floor for discussion. Everyone. I would like to ask Richard, Cecil, Marco, and Melanie, can you hear me? Your mics needs to be unmuted now.
I hear you very clearly. Richard. Connected. You guys need to unmute your microphone.
Hello? Yeah, you're on speakerphone, but I don't have the mic set up properly, so
that's
so
fine.
1 second. Hold a second.
Sure. Okay, we can hear loud.
This is Cecil on the same microphone.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. So let me go with my first questions to Richard. Role in the DaLA process and how data is used to support this process.
Well, my more linking the DaLA team with the technical people and the data reposed. So I was more or less on the periphery of that. I did through that process observe the challenge faced with obtaining the data and some of the outcomes of the data analysis. That was very instrumental, especially rainfall data in picture of what caused the damage and putting it within a particular context, just not that was recorded at the main meteorological center in the south. Being such a context, just to validate the destruction that we saw.
To ask the same question to Cecil Harris. What was your role in the DaLA process and how data was used to support this process?
Good afternoon, everyone. My role as senior engineer was to essentially accompany the team to the various sites. Prior to arriving here, I would have traveled to the various sites with the engineers, assess the damage ourselves, and therefore would have been in a good position to show the World Bank the areas and critical areas that were in fact damaged upon their arrival. Apart from site visits, I was also involved in the technical setups for the various that we determined would need funding for. They assisted in providing cost estimates in these particular areas. Most of them were, of course, infrastructure, roads and bridges primarily, and slides, and of an estimate, new intentions for these landslide areas, whether they be gabion baskets or reinforced concrete walls. Of course, strategizing on the various project priorities. In other words, which one should be prioritized, what order, and whether in fact projects should be prioritized in terms of the geographical area of destruction. In other words, we are into 6 or 7 areas: windward, leeward, northward, central, leeward, etc. So categorizing and prioritizing projects in terms of their geographical location, or prioritizing these projects in terms of type. In other words, all damaged bridges, all landslide areas, etc. It became important because funding agencies approach the areas of damage differently. Want to concentrate on an area. Some may want to concentrate on particular types of interventions, whether it just be bridges or roads. So a little discomfort is there. But I provided whatever technical backup was required by World Bank in terms of construction times, etc.
I would like to repeat the same questions to Mark Rodriguez.
Yes, very much. Afternoon to the panelists. It's a experiences from DaLA. First, in Saint Vincent was a leader of that process, and Lucia, I was a co. For me, interesting because it's the first experience when we have to methodology, the ECLAC methodology to the of DaLA normal assessment processes. In many years ago, implemented the methodology in the countries around the world, and they have very, very good experience on adjusting the methodology. But in this case, we had a challenge because we needed to adjust the processing apply in the very, very short time. The teams it's very, very small to. For my opinion, the rapid DaLA is based on the comparative analysis between baseline and the available post-disaster. The report one end to describe what is the characteristics of the event and consider the basic indicators like population, strategic infrastructure, and the consequences in social and economical, short, medium, and long term. In these cases, particularly, the DaLA process aims reflected the most important aspect to the impact to the authorities and international cooperation. They wanted to have to take decisions after the post, normally related with the how to finance, how to start the next process to rehabilitation, reconstructions, and recovery. The most important question is what is the total amount that they needed to start the reconstruction, and what is the possible sources of these funds. The wanted plans were, of course, to start to describe the event, describe hazard, and they wanted to identify the existing vulnerabilities with support. Of course, vulnerability included a base sample index on poverty for region, light livelihood, etc., etc. But I wanted to identify these vulnerabilities in the mapping of countries.
When you say mapping, you are saying GIS data, use of the GIS data to really. Okay.
Exactly. This is the most important because when you map, when you identify what happened with the hazard, what is the event, maybe you can to understand the most important aspect to find out what is the impact in the population and infrastructure. Very important to the processing is that most vulnerability population were most important populations. What happened with them that they needed to move it to the other side, etc., etc. On strategic infrastructure, bridge, water and sanitation, electricity, health centers, education, agriculture, commerce, housing, or like Asia, for example, what is the impact in the tourism is very, very important. We need to know the impact on what with the economy after the disaster. What happened with the index of poverty? What happened with the price in the markets? What happened with the incomes? What happened with the etc., etc. And of course, with all the information, we have to create prioritizations, the activities to rehabilitation and reconstructions.
What you are saying, Marco, what you are saying is now you will be needing additional data, more data to support even for the recovery phase that is being now. That's happening now. Is that right?
Exactly. It's very important because we needed to take decisions now in this moment, and of course we needed to all the information available. Use maybe the information you needed to the very, very comfortable sources. Of the DaLA is the fastest and in very short time. You need to the 3, 4, or 5 in Vincent. In Santa, you needed to get the first report in 5 days. It's very important to focusing in the results and always the contribution to the information of the basic information.
I would like to move to the next panelist. Our next panelist, Melanie Harris. What role in the process, the DaLA process, damage and loss assessment process, and how data is used to support this?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, role centered around the analysis of data collected remotely. It's not on site, but I was working from here at the University of Saint Vincent, Universities, and what I did is centered around the analysis of the hazard event itself, so the rainfall data that was collected in the field. I took that and we had analysis to get an idea of the event across the entire island. So looking at tabulation of all the data collected in the south and in the north of the island using some data from full gauge stations, and coming that to existing data, things like the population and the looking at distribution of the event over the island and how it impacted in terms of the different regions in the island.
So it was more like supporting GIS analysis remotely to identify and then understand the event itself. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Very good. So to give some perspective, like we have been, I have been sending large amount of data to Melanie, and then more rainfall data the location data, how much rainfall was recorded by each rainfall gauges. And our idea was, can we spatially populate that, taking in account of the catchment area that each country has, and then how to do best to interpolation of that data so that all experts can understand the event better. Go to my next questions now. First, I will start with Richard. Richard, what are the key lessons learned in terms of access to the data and disaster resilience? Now we can hear you, Richard.
You can ask Richard the question again. He had just stepped out for a minute.
Okay. What are the key lessons learned in terms of access to the data and that access, relating that access to disaster resilience?
I think the lesson learned for us was one, the quality of the data to extent. So readily available access to the data. In that we data from the river meters, because the type of data recorders, they have manually, the data has to be manually retrieved on a daily basis. Going to those river meters a couple of days after a catastrophic event meant that you lost the data that went then recorded on the actual day of the event. You have stuff like road failures, debris, normal access to the recorders. You have that. So that spoke to the quality of the data. The main data we used was the rainfall data from water authority, but in a database where you can just go analyzing the data. They had all the raw data. You had to actually take historical rainfall data from scratch to build your analysis. With the software were a simple fix, because they weren't being called on to deliver large volumes of data in a period of time. They're and doing manual manipulation of it in Excel, simply because the software that they were using needed fixing, but there was hand on it. So, time it's their purposes, but post disaster it's sort of onerous.
Yeah. You may summarize your thoughts and add a little bit my thoughts on that also. Is access to data is one, but how to extract the useful information during the disaster time, and that's also like the large volume of data, and in this may varieties of data that comes to play, and then extract meaningful information in a very short period of time. That seems to be a challenge and lesson learned, and that both during the emergency as well as maybe post disaster as well. Let me ask the same questions to Marco, because Richard was working as a facilitator from the government side, whereas Marco was in the World Bank. So I'd like to ask the same questions to Mark. What are the key lessons learned in terms of access to data as well as its potential to disaster resilience? Mark?
visual. It's interesting because we work, with, of course, with Rachel and Cecil on these weeks. It's very to obtain the information. Very important process to buy by the government and with the reality of the results. It's to consider the different available data. We have a data in many different expressions, and you have to express it with data in or some charts or some for reports. And of course, as Cecil explained, they needed to translate, they needed to manipulate the information to translate the format of the data. This is a very, very important to take time to work. I think always the first lesson learned is to keep the databases updated because we ask about the certain information, socioeconomic, for example, or demographic, and the information very oldest 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and of course it's very difficult to compare 6 or 6 or years ago to updating. I think the other important is to keep the information from the first moment with the first phases to respond to disasters. It's very the database expresses in the states or areas or the zones when the defense or NEMO reports, because we needed to express this information in the time, and we had to create a data to how to the development of the disaster. And of course, it's very important that this information have a very good format, normally in standard, and need to express the information in GIS system. Process to validation, because we work with HR and to take them to confirmation with the historical data, because it's when to estimate the damage, we needed to establish a prices, and of course we needed to price. We need to consider that to dating the prices, we needed to consider the actual information, and of course we needed to take it the reference prices or economic or finance prices. The other lesson learned for me in my criteria is we needed to very important to sectoral authorities with responsibility to manage and provide the information. These countries we have with the authorities and have all the information. It is very important because the process of validation is very early, easy, and they have to authority to final results. And just we needed to the GIS system, and we need to cause human resources with training in operating of GIS system.
Very good, Marco. If I may add to that, like in time of crisis, actually know what your vulnerabilities are. Is true for the data and data management issue. Like we have to do this damage and loss assessment process in a very quick time. As Marco said, trying to price it and know how much is damage and what loss anticipated, and then although getting a large number of data, some of the data they were not updated, they were not the baseline set up, as well as being constrained in the time. We not process the data really quickly that we wanted to do, and all the data could not be. So can we do certain way that all large volume of data is way to do quickly, I mean, so that decision makers have access to that information in real time. That be another lessons learned or potential lessons learned from the event. So I will go through the next questions. I have seen that there is some questions coming out from the WebEx chat window. We will be taking those questions at the end of this discussion. So more questions to panelists, and then I will open the forum for discussion. My question is, was the spatial data management system hosted on GeoNode was useful, and what further improvement do you suggest? Go with Cecil Harris for this question.
Oh, it's a difficult one for me to answer. Direct involved in the geodata management. What I do know is that in terms of learned with regard to data, is that in the Saint Vincent scenario, rainfall data we found was scattered in a lot of different locations. So you had the airport had its data, ministry had data, Central Water and Sewage Authority had data. So to get all three of them together to get all the relevant information. And all information was not in fact stored on some central cloud system that you refer to. We could cut down a lot of time if they were all this data was actually stored there. Fortunately as well, was not actual data that we were looking for, which is rainfall intensity. Actually had intensity data, which is the most important data for the hydrologists. Rainfall intensity. A lot of them had daily rainfall or 6-hourly rainfall. What we need is rainfall. So coming out of this is that we have to stop this daily rainfall gathering and try instrumentation that can monitor rainfall intensity as well. That aspect and of course should be stored on a central cloud system. The other aspect about data was I'm a civil engineer, so my background is essentially primarily civil and structural engineering. But I didn't see information, and I could be wrong, but I didn't see any information related to the loss of topsoil. Now, when you do an event, I would have thought that the loss of topsoil, agriculturists, might be a problem. Maybe a lot of topsoil here that it doesn't matter how much topsoil you lose. But loss of topsoil doesn't seem to figure much in discussions or data collection. And I was just wondering in the back of my mind whether going forward, in terms of loss, what country lost? I mean, if we lost, 1 million tons of topsoil, don't forget soil takes a long minute to generate. It's a very long geologic time period that you get topsoil being generated. So when you get these type of events and you have an extreme amount of topsoil being lost, I think that sort of data should factor in at some stage into the loss assessment. Stored on some central system, cloud system. As you may be aware, we did have that was included that GIS platform to locate all the roads and bridges on the island. That was very useful in terms of trying to pinpoint those bridges that were in fact damaged. Had a part of that consultancy was a damage assessment, a condition assessment of those bridges. Had information readily at hand to compare the damage now from the past. this point.
I would like to ask the same questions to Melanie Harris now. How was the spatial data management platform hosted on GeoNode useful, and what further improvements do you suggest?
All right. So in terms of the I'm not too sure what page they were at, but essentially we did not use it. One was that because it was not in a state of readiness for sharing data, we ended up to use and my suggestion or my recommendation would then be that if we had such a system up and running, we would need to be sending large amounts of data via email or using things like Dropbox to share data. Essentially, the GeoNode platform will present a way of supplying GIS data, people opting it as a central repository, and people could access it remotely to help in situations like this, right? So I would suggest that if we had that type of a central repository, that we could do analysis of the data. On that note, further improvement, as I said, is to serve the Caribbean easily, and we things in place that would hold or perform. So, good server system. We have a DNS that has been registered in our name, and that way we can share data amongst the Caribbean. And I'm talking things like base data sets that will be very useful in situations like this. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Yes, as we were talking about the cloud-based data hosting and data sharing, in the cases of disasters and emergency like this, sharing the data become even crucial. Like as the new data comes in, those data needs to have access. I mean, people working on those data needs to have access quickly. So sending the data through email and then get the data, downloading the data email is applied. But if we could use the platform itself to share share the results, that would be improvements we think that would be very good in future. Thank you for your suggestions for that. Go for the last questions, and I will limit answer to these questions maybe 1 to 2 minutes, maximum 2 minutes, because I think we are running a little bit out of time. So this question is for everyone, all the panelists. What do you recommend to decision makers to improve data for decision making process? So I will start with Richard again.
Well, I'll preaching to the converted. And what we have, the government is the value of data and of data in terms of the terms of it. We're not behind in making GeoNode become a practical reality because we're still of the stakeholders guiding us on modalities for sharing in terms of the protocols and what data is sensitive and what is be shared widely. It is only when you have disasters of this nature realize how would have been in and then how to deal with potentialities in the future.
Very good. I will ask the same questions to Melanie Harris. Melanie?
Well, I am also have a system like GeoNode operating for sharing is very important, but pay attention to the quality of data that you upload. So we're not looking at the raw data, but things like a data product, things like your rainfall that are GIS ready. Right? So it's not enough to just have a sharing platform, but have GIS ready information for analysis, because these have happens, we need to be quick in terms of how we analyze the event. Having GIS ready data set puts us out of the game that way.
I'll ask the same question to Cecil Harris. Cecil, what would you recommend to decision makers to improve data for decision making process?
I want to just follow up on something that Richard said, which concentrated the actual decision maker, that not yet ready, we're not data users yet. It's as though a lot of decision makers don't see the value as yet in our data. This is a regional matter because, especially in the small islands, where when decisions have to be made, usually finances are so short, options are so limited, that data doesn't, where it should, and play a major role, it doesn't. There are other considerations that step in when decisions have to be made. And you find this lack of data culture, to coin a phrase, something that we need to overcome. Data is in fact very, very important when finances are very, very limited, because very reason. I think so decision makers have the risk in the assumptions that they have to make, where there's a lack of data, and very often there is a lack of data. So decision makers have to understand the risks that are associated with the assumptions, and along with that, be able to make a correct assumptions to fill data gaps. And I think that out of this DaLA process, there should be a sort of data template set up so that if a DaLA team were to come in tomorrow or next week, know, and we would be gathering information to send all the boxes. This is the data that is required. This is the infrastructure data that is required, etc., etc. So we should be continually ticking those boxes through this data template that should be set up coming up with DaLA report. So it's a simple process. We have information already packaged, so as soon as the event occurs, we're able to just write our reports and provide the data to the DaLA team.
That template is very useful. I hope we don't get this one anytime soon.
I completely understand your concern. Yes. Yeah. Just to reiterate what Cecil mentioned, actually, all the suggestions he made is really, really important. But what caught my attention was data is really important when our financial capability is also limited. So there is the point, like where to build and how to build. If I'm to rebuild again, I need to be very cautious where to build and how do I build, so that I want to have that build resilient for future climatic event. So I'd like to go to our list for this last questions and insight on this. Would you please tell what would be your recommendation to decision makers using the improved data for this decision making process?
I'm 1 or 2 minutes. First, we need to or our authorities need to understand what is the real capacity of the GIS systems. We need to create a culture to use the GIS systems to take decisions. We needed to explain what is the benefit, advantage to use to GIS systems to the national authorities or the authorities. This is the first very important. They needed to move it to improve it or to implement it, the systems in the countries. We have we need to understand it's not only to provide data. We need not only data. We needed to analysis and more simulations. We needed not only to get the information statics. We needed to run the analysis and what future. We need to create the capacity to understand what is in the future. We needed in the analysis, we needed to integrate it different aspects of multi-sectoral or scenarios on different levels, national and subnational levels. How to use the information, how is the impact, how the working is the data, and what is the impact of the decisions. I concentrate in the aspect where the authorities or decision makers need to learn how to use the information, what is the benefit, needed, of course, to go to one step more to analysis and conclusions and explain it what happened with the decision after that.
This is a really good insight that you provided. So data is one part of this puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is how quick you can have these analytical tools and use that analysis. For example, as you said, for simulation, what if scenario, what if this happens tomorrow, even before the event has happened, and then make preparation for that. As you may know, like the technology is moving more and more towards gathering large amount of data. So definitely there might be something we can look for, like this data is coming in, both structured and non-structured data, in some sort of a big data platform, and in also using like the social media and others in a real time, doing what we call just-in-time analysis. And that could be probably the banks should be looking at how we can do that. With that, I would like to now open the floor for questions. Please use the WebEx chat window to ask the questions. There are a few questions that has been already asked, but most of these questions are asked privately. So I think I have to read those questions, and I will pass these questions to panelists. The first question is from Marion. His question is, are new data collection and processing workflows now in place in the upper countries? And will collection and processing be sustained? So I'll pass these questions to Richard. Data collection and processing workflow after this lesson learned, is it in place now?
I would say so. What I would say though, it has re-energized the stakeholders, building up the platform, sharing the data, and being more ready. So we're actually in getting the data shared. We are looking over the quality of the data collection. So, for example, a lot of the rivers were damaged. So we replaced those, and we're trying to ensure that the type of recorders are more relevant to our needs.
Sure. Second question is also from Marion. He's asking, were there metadata issues with the data that were made available, and what kind of pre-processing was required to enable the integration of these disparate data sets? I'll pass questions to Melanie.
in terms of metadata, very little was available, if any at all. And pre-processing, because most of the data sets weren't GIS ready, we had to take them out of like Excel sheets, do some computation there within Excel, and then that to the data in the GIS. For example, it took a while to get the applications to me because there's some was a data set, shapefile of rainfall stations, but not all the gauges were active or collecting data. So we match the Excel data to the stations and then doing that and then begin processing and doing our interpolation of that data. So it had lots of gaps and there were 3 stations that could have been used to do a proper interpolation island. So yeah.
Definitely there were issues with metadata, like although the data is there, but we didn't know in some cases like what was the unit of measurement. We assume it's a millimeter, like if it's a case of roll, we assume it's a millimeter per hour, but then again, since this was not explicit, we have to go back and ask whether that unit of measurement that we are using was correct one. And it was like it's a huge difference between use the different units of measurement if it's a centimeter per hour versus millimeter per hour, inches per hour. Another question, the question from Kevin Debet. The question is related to area of research. He asked, what remote sensing GIS systems were used, if any, for building damage and assessment? Are still relevant ground-based surveys? We'll pass to Cecil and Richard, and maybe later to Marco. So, yeah, go ahead.
All assessment was ground-based completely. The structure damage, which I believe comprised most of the damage, was boots on the ground and calculating the damage based on reconstruction work that was completed on the island. And that maybe if you're in a wheel, so it's easy to drive around. To drive around in a day, but I think we got bounced.
Yes, we are.
Okay, yeah. So it's just our video link has gone. So it was easy to drive around and calculate the damages. But on a much larger landmass, you probably have to use some GIS-based approach to do calculation of damages.
Yeah, add to what Cecil just said, we got access to remote sensing imagery just after the impact. The issue was like we got the radar imagery just after the impact. We send it, again, we did some sort of a crowdsourcing to analyze it, and we send it for processing, but not much could be seen because of the resolution of the imagery we got. It was like about 2.5 to 5 meter imagery. You need to understand that this was a heavy rainfall and flood event that caused the disaster. And when it's a heavy rainfall, it's a cloud, so optical imagery was not useful. So either you have to fly the airplane, the cloud, or you have to take the satellite imagery using radar. And the imagery we got didn't have a sufficient granularity to actually know how much damage was done. And also because it's a flood event, the damage is more on because of the damaging the house, mostly the content houses, rather than completely destroying the houses. But we use GIS. We use GIS to understand and put the different data together, which Melanie already explained in partly. But I sure yes, this becomes really important as data ready, as trying to plug in what damages would be done. Either these different sources, like remote sensing sources, could be really useful in future. Another question is, what is the status of instrumentation that's provided under the PPCR pilot program for climate resilience for Saint Vincent and Grenadines? I believe the instrumentation here means rainfall measurement instrumentation. I mean hydromet instrumentation. Richard and Cecil. Probably Richard.
I'm sorry, I was trying to set back the video.
Yeah, what status of instrumentation that was provided under the PPR for SVG?
Status. We some hydrological equipment for I believe that would speak to that. We're really just in the process of delivering this week.
That's the event.
But out of the event.
Okay.
Yeah. The event?
Yeah.
Well, the rainfall meters, river meters that I spoke about earlier, we're looking to replace those. So, that's it.
Okay. There's another question from Philippe. The question is, it mentioned that the hourly rainfall data for intensity was needed as to daily data. So rainfall intensity was what is needed. And any other areas that you may see that may need standardizing, but more so, is there a template of minimum specifications or similar set of guidelines to have even data aggregation throughout the islands? This is a really technical question. I will check it. Certain guidelines, like for example, if you want to create rain intensity versus rainfall intensity, and then what we call the rainfall curve. There are certain guidelines. Like, first of all, not only, even I say I will go for the hourly intensity data, I would go for more granularity, and there are instrumentation. They would measure the rainfall at the wall, like the tipping rain gauge. So when the rain gauge is 1 millimeter of rain, it tips. So it's not like it's not measuring by hour, but rather amount of the rainfall it's happening. So every millimeter of rain, it tips over, and then it collects the data. It sends those directly to the central server. But yes, those guidelines exist, but those has not yet being used in the islands. So this is a good suggestion that yes, we need to look at, like, if we need to do analysis, what basis of analysis. And I should mention here that at the bank we are going to we are actually in the process of having a second risk information program. Also try to make not one guidelines, but also what data are required to do hazard analysis, as well as to what resolution that are required. Let's say, for example, if you want to do hazard analysis at national level, and let's say if that hazard analysis is flood analysis, what are the data you require and what you require. But the same thing if you want to do in a city or small town level, what are the resolution and what are the data which is required. And if you want it, I can connect you to the team who is doing this study. We still have some time for taking additional questions, maybe 5 minutes more. Okay. The question to actually direct to Melanie. How to use the university capacities to create more GIS information? How to use University of West Indies, the capacity to do analysis in this case? Melanie?
First, in dealing with that, we needed to upgrade our capacity to data, and we have done that. So now it's just a matter of contacting the university when you need things done, and we support, as far as we said, we support in terms of training and also in terms of analysis for specific situations. So right now, we need to get more with the World Bank to start little projects within the country. Again, as I said, it's just a matter of contacting us here at the department, and we give assistance where applicable.
To add what Melanie said, also we are looking at how we use databases and data management as the core curriculum of University of West Indies. We are looking at, and last year, in February last year, we did advanced training on spatial data management, and one of the output of that training material, we are looking at how we can use it in developing the core curriculum at University of West Indies. Go ahead, Melanie.
We already did implement some of it in our certificate program, so we used some of the lessons from that training in February, and we implemented it in our running of the certificate program. So in terms of spatial analysis and modeling, we did some of that work there, and also applying some of the mobile analysis in our enterprise GIS course running currently this semester.
So one more question. I see there are a lot of questions there. I'll take one more question. So another one is from Otis. To what extent do you intend to involve CIMH and CDMA in enhancing the data management systems in the countries? As far as the data management is concerned, like we have both CDMA and CIMH are the partners. We are partners in that. And if you look at this in particular, access to CIMH DRI platform. We actually got the data from different sources. Like we got the data from NOAA, the regional scale, how the weather pattern was forming during those December 24 and 25th. And then the DRI platform that gives us the data that is collected out from Barbados. So we had the every data collected from system, and then also we had ground-based measuring instruments. So actually compared three data actually to characterize the event. So that was a really good question, and then we were constantly in touch with the CIMS engineer, asking them the questions like, what was the parameters and how much the rainfall intensity was in this. Actually, we use that data in analysis itself. told by my colleagues that we have until 3:45, so I would go for more questions now. Who have to go because of your busy agenda? We are recording this web session, so we will put it on our community website afterwards. So if you want to go and you have to go, you can go. So another question from Marion is, where are the issues of scale appropriateness with integration of disparate data sets? Definitely yes. As I just mentioned, we have data from remote sensing, or let's say satellite remote data. Then we have the ground-based sensor data. Obviously, these two data, in many respects, they were being somehow different story. Although in terms of intensity of the event, they were pointing us the almost the right way. But if you look at the quality of data, they're different. Like, let's say we have like a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer grid versus data rainfall gauge, where we were measuring rainfall data continuously. So there were definitely some issues in integrating it. So what we did was we took the knowledge from this remote sensing data. Actually, when we started using the data to characterize the events, we actually used the data as much as possible from the data collected on our ground. Marco, maybe you want to add something onto that? In sets of data, how we and integrating it, data itself. I mean, data as well.
Yes. Only one idea, final idea, unrecommended. It we consider it to the GIS information or database in GIS, not the disaster risk. But we needed to use in all activities the information. We needed to introduce this information on the process and the decisions every day. Not only to consider the deep, we needed to relate the use of the information. We needed to management information to the process, to the monitoring, the development objectives. We use in every day and in all the information. I recommend it to have a very focus not only in the DRM and on data on the GIS systems. We consider it in the planning process.
I have another question from Marion. Besides rainfall data, what other thematic data sets were used in analysis? Actually, we collected, besides rainfall data, we collected all the baseline data that may be useful. For example, land use, land cover, soil, slope, digitalization model, and try to understand. We complete analysis based on that, but at least try to understand like what the terrain looks like. Where are the most of the damages and then also what catchments were contributing more rainfall as well as more runoff. Those kind of analysis we try to do. Besides, also we try to collect data of the damages itself. So this process is, although we have the sort of a damage and loss assessment report, but this process needs to be continued, and then as panelists recommended, we need some analysis put in if the events we wish and hope these events do not repeat. That's our sincere hope. But the fact of the matter is we live in a very vulnerable place. I mean, climatically speaking. So if this event happens in future, we may have a quick method to analysis if those analysis parameters are there. Want to add something?
No, I agree with what you said there. Also, in terms of other thematic data sets, we try using things like population density, but because of the level at which it was aggregated already, it was hard to apply it in the analysis. It was aggregated to like the counties level. We needed it to be more specific to the actual areas that population existed. So it was spread out across the entire island, and there was no way to disaggregate that data to apply analysis.
We actually have a lot of questions coming up. What I would suggest is like we will copy those questions and put up on our community site, and then it as an open discussion so that people can contribute to it. Closing this session, I would like to ask each panelist to give their final remarks on this. I will start with Marco.
Well, in my formula, this is first experience. We needed to continue the efforts to final methodology. We find the outputs and outcomes, and of course we needed to work together with the countries to create the capacity in each country to this methodology. It's not complicated, it's very easy. Maybe we have to start to create national capacities and local capacities to apply this methodology. And also we needed to integrate the basis and results of the impacts to create a very historical databases to the visitors. This is very important to create the new research in the future.
I would ask Richard to give his final thoughts.
Well, look at it broadly. Unfortunately, we're discussing today. Cecil alluded to it somewhat. It's really a supply and demand issue, and we only realize how much we need it when the situation is as bad as it did. So going forward, it is to try to use the event, develop the type of systems. We could continue to have good data and analyze the same to make better decisions going forward.
Melanie?
Echo what Richard said. Richard, and basically subjective in Caribbean and get this up and running and be prepared. We have the GeoNode as a cost option, so we don't have to use proprietary software. This platform presents a very low-cost option so that governments can buy into it and start getting their spatial data and their spatial data infrastructure systems up and running, and should anything happen.
Thank you, Melanie. Cecil, you are last one.
I will echo what has been said already. I think that there might be some minutes of meeting, or we can access what was said here in the future, so that the session can probably try and spearhead some of the recommendations that have come out of this discussion, so that the next time around we are good to deal with the post-event challenges. I would point out to many that one of the ways we got around the population of information on population spread was to go to the 2010 election results and the polling stations. You, of course, would not know what polling station was where, but it's very useful going to the 2010 results, using polling stations which were much more targeted to what the population was like. And of course, there was other information in the last census which indicated, what of the population was 18 and under, and so you could, better analysis of the affected population.
Your point, as I said, this WebEx session is recorded, and we will put the link of this recording on community website. Also, Brad just posted the link to the questions, so I would invite the panelists to check the link and decide to the questions those are not answered, and then we can kind of keep on this thread live, so that we actually, the WebEx is not the end of this, but rather starting point when we can start sharing how to manage data in this emergency situation, how to use that, how to help decision makers in using those data. With this, I'd like to conclude this webinar. Again, thank you very much for coming, and then let's hope to meet you again in near future. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Righto.